Gumba Mulgun Gumba Nani Gia Nindu, which is good evening, it's good to see you, and that's in Burragum language, which is the community that I grew up on the Darling Downs. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's fantastic to see so many of you here this evening. My name is Vicky McDonald, and it's my great privilege to be the State Librarian and CEO of your library, the State Library of Queensland. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to those who are watching us via live stream this evening. But let me first begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and pay respects to their ancestors who came before them. The location of State Library of Queensland on Kurilpa Point is a traditional meeting, gathering and sharing place for Aboriginal people, and we proudly continue that tradition today and every day of the year. I would also like to acknowledge and welcome our speaker for tonight, entrepreneur Harvey Lister, Chairman and CEO of AEG Ogden, our facilitator, Ray Weeks, Chairman of the CEO Institute, members of the Library Board of Queensland, the Queensland Library Foundation Council, QUT Business School, and the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame Governing Committee. Our generous donors and partners, Pitcher Partners, Channel 7, Morgans, NAB and RACQ. And I'm also really pleased to welcome members of the Business South Bank Board. It's terrific to have you here as well as friends and supporters of the State Library of Queensland. There is something deeply satisfying about a good conversation. It ignites our thinking and illuminates the world of possibility. And that is something we believe in and nurture at the State Library. Tonight's speaker has been named one of Queensland's most influential people, so you can be assured of an absorbing and inspiring exchange this evening. The Game Changer event series provides a platform for innovative leaders from business, technology, and the creative industries to share their insights. You will hear their candid personal reflections and learn about the sacrifices made on the road to success. You will also glimpse the special X factor that separates them from their peers. Game Changers is an initiative of the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame. It was established in 2009 by State Library, the Queensland Library Foundation and the QUT Business School. The Hall of Fame celebrates, records and retells stories of Queensland's outstanding business leaders and their many contributions to the development of our state. And I think on the slides before tonight's evening, you've seen some of those people coming through on the slides. We hope their stories will inspire and help inform your own professional endeavours. As I mentioned, tonight's conversation is being live streamed, so if you're watching online, we encourage you to tweet questions and use the hashtag QBLHOF, and don't forget to tag your location as well. And we'll look at those questions in the Q&A session. Audience members will be able to also ask questions, and Ray will lead that conversation as well. If you need to leave early this evening, can I ask that you leave through the doors at the back, and that will help you to exit at level 3 as well. But for now, I'd like to welcome Ray Weeks to the stage to introduce Harvey Lister. But I think, are you all right? Yep. Okay. Welcome, Ray. Thanks.
Thanks, Vicky, and good evening and welcome. The microphone has just dropped, but I'll fix it by the time we get underway, believe me. At these Game Changers events, as Vicky's indicated, we hear the stories and the insights from our greatest entrepreneurs and business leaders. We hear their stories of growth, how they built their companies, reinvented themselves, rethought their business models. We hear how these leaders challenge accepted rules and expectations, how they change the way something is done, and how they capitalise on seeing the big picture that others don't see. And you'll hear that tonight. And how they see the big opportunities and disrupt the market they're operating in. So what strikes all of us about the great leaders, the great entrepreneurs, the great game changers is that they think differently, they act differently, and they lead differently. Harvey Lister embodies these elements and so many more. Harvey began his career in the music industry in Brisbane, radio station 4IP, and in 1975 launched his concert and event business. And for the past 45 years, he's been involved in the presentation and management of events covering all sports, the arts, conventions and exhibitions, concerts and general entertainment. He designs and operates major public assembly facilities that we'll talk about tonight. Harvey Lister is Chairman and Chief Executive of AEG Ogden, which is the largest venue management company in the Asia-Pacific region. He and his companies have to date been involved in over 40,000 major events, and before the end of the year, he's going to have 20,000 employees. So Harvey was responsible for establishing the Queensland Leisure operation to manage the Brisbane Entertainment Centre and later the development of the business into a global network of venues in partnership with US-based entertainment industry giant AEG, which is the leading sports and venue operator in the world. Now, Harvey Lister's other positions, his former roles and the awards and recognitions he's received, we just don't have the time to go through it. There are so many. But let me say that he is a director of the Peak Industry Group, Tourism and Transport Forum, chairman of the Sydney Kings professional basketball team, a major shareholder in the Broncos, and a director of the Asia Pacific Screen Awards. He's a member of the International Association of Venue Management and has been awarded the Australian Centenary Medal by the federal government. Also the International Executive in Sport and Entertainment Award, and was inducted at the 2017 Australian Tourism Awards as a tourism legend. He's been listed as number 8 in the Courier Mail's Power 100, which is a list of the 100 most influential Queenslanders. Now, as you'll hear tonight, the Harvey Lister story is one of remarkable achievement, brilliant vision, strong self-belief, passion, and determined optimism. It's where you don't take no for an answer and where you see things that others don't. Now, in the time you're going to see this reel, I'm going to have this microphone fixed, guaranteed. So before Harvey joins us on stage for the interview, just have a look at this. Harvey calls it a sizzler reel, and I think this is a great understanding of the remarkable AEG story. Let's have a look at the video.
Life is made of memories. And memories are made of passion, power, glory, and triumph. It's the experiences that create these memories that connect us to one another. For over 20 years, AEG has given the world reason to cheer.
For the second time in 3 years, the Kings are the Stanley Cup champions!
Bringing fans experiences they'll never forget. The biggest names in music. The greatest moments in sports.
The Los Angeles Galaxy are the first to 5!
The best facilities on the planet. At its core, AEG is about innovation.
I wanna taste love
About creativity. And it's about taking dreams and making them a reality.
It's fans like her that make me do what I do, so I want to say thank you so much.
It's going places others don't dare to by creating the most exciting entertainment districts in the world. Projects that are revitalizing the communities in which they are built. LA Live in downtown Los Angeles. The O2 in London. And the Mercedes-Benz Platz in Berlin. Bringing live entertainment worldwide with first-of-their-kind facilities in China, South America, and Australia.
Open up my eyes. Tell me I'm alive.
This blend of venues, music, festivals, and sports gives AEG the unique ability to reach fans the world over, connecting people with our talent, our partners, and one another. AEG works with the world's most respected companies, creating tailor-made environments for them to share their vision with our world. We collaborate with the biggest names in music by giving artists an environment to create.
This is my fight song. Take back my life song. Prove I'm alright song.
We nurture championship teams with our commitment to winning.
A lot of I love to me.
And together, we deliver the most complete experience in entertainment to our fans. From ticketing through access to the best facilities, staff, and live events on the planet. At AEG, our commitment goes beyond the footprint of our buildings and festivals into the communities that surround them. Partnering with local governments and programs to make an impact in the places we call home. Because in each city, in each venue, and behind everything that we do, our goal is to create a better world for everyone. For over 20 years, we've created memorable experiences for billions of fans around the world. AEG is committed to pushing live entertainment to new places. It's who we are, and we believe we've only just begun. AEG, giving the world reason to cheer.
Please welcome Harvey Lister. Thanks for helping us out in the microphone. I appreciate
That's all right. I'm an old roadie.
Harvey, when you look at that, what are your thoughts? When you see this sizzle reel?
Well, I love watching it. And you sort of think, holy heck, is that why I'm so tired? There's a lot of stuff, and it's a lot of fun. And we're very fortunate to have venues around the world that are entrusted to us to operate and program by the communities that have built them. These venues, whether they're sports stadiums, indoor arenas, convention exhibition centres, these are the cathedrals of this era. And cathedrals across all religions really became the community spaces that people went to hear news of what was happening in their community, sometimes to be entertained, sometimes to debate, and sometimes for a retreat space if there was a weather event or something else that was happening. So we're living in an era now where communities across the world are developing these wonderful new spaces, and they're looking to companies like ours, firstly to operate them professionally and properly, and secondly to program and make sure they're put to good use.
So describe in a couple of sentences the essence of AEG.
Well, AEG globally is a whole number of things, but it's a vertically integrated sport and entertainment business. Principally, we operate facilities. We have a division, AEG Presents, that provides content. AEG Sport is one of the largest owners of professional sports franchises. We have a fabulous festivals division. So many of you would know of Coachella, that the great festival that happens every year just south of Los Angeles. Well, AEG started, and and with some partners owns that and a whole stack of other festivals as well. A very active sponsorship and partnerships division, and then everything else that bounces off all of those businesses.
Good. Now, let's go back to the early days. And you began your career as a promotions manager, as we heard at radio station 4AP, and then as a promoter of tours with Australian bands in the 70s. Tell us about your personal journey, including your start with Air TV, and give us an understanding of how your mother had an influence on your career.
Well, I guess I finished school. I was going to be a optometrist, and there wasn't schoolies week then. But with some mates, we all took a surfboard, a fishing rod, a tent, and an esky, and off we went to the wonderful Stradbroke Island. And I convinced myself in those couple of weeks that there was no way I was going to university for 4 years. And in that era, and I feel sorry for young people of today, but in that era, there was no trouble getting a job. You'd apply for 6 jobs, you get offered 5, and you had to work out which one you wanted to take. And so I thought, well, I'll just take something and get started. I had to earn some money, so I started at the Bank of New South Wales. My mother had taught at Clayfield College in Somerville House. She taught home economics or dressmaking, and it was the start of talkback radio. And she had been asked to do Ask the Dressmaker on a radio station in Brisbane called 4BH, and the host in the afternoon, his name was Ivor Hancock, and she came home one night and said to me, you know, you've got to be doing something else. And she said, well, Ivor Hancock and a famous television, one of the early television people in Brisbane, Uncle Jim Iliff on Channel 9, and they had a program at night time, a course called Air TV, and it was for people who wanted to go into radio and television. I'd never even thought about that, but I thought, no, that's a good idea. Thursday nights, got on the tram from Ashgrove and went in and did that course. And it's where people would call the Air TV course if they were looking for somebody in that business. And this wonderful fashion entrepreneur in Brisbane at the time, he was the head of public relations for Myer. His name was Desmond Hughes. He was out there and outrageous and a wonderful man. And he'd called the Air TV program and said, looking for someone to do store announcements, and have you got anybody in your course? And so they sent me and a couple of other people down to meet with him, and I got that job. So I sat in this dingy little booth in the old Myer store in the Valley that's not there anymore, doing announcements all day about what was on sale and those things. And it was 2 weeks in, I'd been doing it, I loved it, it was fun. And the Brookside Shopping Centre, I think, was opening that afternoon. So Mr. Hughes said, young man, would you like to come out with me? We're going out for the opening of our brand new shopping centre. So I said, okay, I'm up for that. And when I got there, the promotions manager at the shopping centre and for the Myer store walked up and resigned on the spot. He'd had enough. It was all too much pressure. And it was opening day, and he walked out. And so Des Hughes looked at me and said, I think you've got yourself a shopping centre. And so I say to young people today, and I've always said to my own children, never miss an opportunity. Doesn't matter, have a crack, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't work out for you the way that somebody else might have envisaged it would. Take that opportunity and have that go.
So what did you learn about people management in those early days? There's some big learnings at that time.
Yes, there are. Well, of course, when you're young, you think you're bulletproof and know everything. But I think probably two things jump out. When I was going through school, I was in the Boy Scouts. I absolutely loved it. And when I was in high school, I was in the school cadets. I was an officer in the school cadets. Although, until the very last year, when I became an officer, before that I was the only drummer at the school. So, it was the start of my music career. I would play the side drum and march the the two platoons of cadets onto parade every Thursday
Well,
morning.
I was a bugle player in the cadets, so
Were you?
it meant nothing to me. Had no impact whatsoever on any career later.
Yeah, well, anyway, I enjoyed playing the drums, but I think the thing that I learnt in both of those organisations was man management. And when you start young and you work through an organisation, you have to learn to give a direction before you can. You have to learn to take a direction before you can learn to give one. And so I think I learnt how to always treat people the way I would have wanted to have been treated. And so I didn't find that too difficult when I was thrown into a position of having to help organise things, because I had the promotions responsibility for a brand new Myer store that was comparing all of their fashion parades, coming up with ideas for merchandising and marketing across the whole of the store, and everybody was older than me.
And the values, where did you get your values from?
I think you always get your values come from your family. And my mum and dad, both not with us anymore, were very, wonderful family life, very straight up and down. Dad had a plumbing business and employed a dozen people and built a nice business. But you also learn a work ethic, and of course he worked 7 days a week if that's what was needed. That phone would ring. Something had blocked up at one of the private girls' schools. He did, most of the private schools around Brisbane did their emergency work as well. And he wouldn't ring one of his men to go and do the job. If it was on a weekend, he went. And so I think you do learn a work ethic, and anybody who does get a chance to learn a work ethic or adopt one, I think it gives you a really good start in whatever you do in life.
So what do you look for, the people that work with you? What are the key attributes you look for in the people that come into your business?
Well, loyalty is never negotiable. But no, these days when we're employing people, somebody else has normally filtered out people for me. And so I'll get CVs, and when I look at people's CVs, I know that they're not going to be there if they don't have all of the proper skills and experience, and because I wouldn't even be seeing it if that was the case. So I go straight to the back page, and I like to have a look at who's got initiative. So I'm looking for somebody who, whilst they're at university, in their university break, they went and did the JP's course at night time, because it only takes 6 or 8 weeks. Or someone who went and got a forklift licence or a truck licence, did a first aid course, went and got their responsible service of alcohol certificate. And I like to ask those questions. Why did you do that? And it's because you never know what it is that's going to come up. And so I find that employing people with initiative is a really important thing to me when I'm looking.
So tell me your personal attributes as a leader in an entrepreneur. So just what have been some of the key contributors to your success, but is there a personal story also, when you explore with us your attributes as a leader, but is there a personal story where you best understood your leadership capacity, do you think?
Well, I've had plenty of opportunities. We're in a business where stuff happens sometimes, and if it didn't, then we wouldn't be needed. So plenty of issues over the years. But maybe I'll explain it this way: is that we had a young lady working for us at one of our venues. She did a terrific job. Very, very capable, very, very strong operator. And she got headhunted to go to a major event. And I was encouraging of her to take that opportunity. I think those things are good. People go away. We have lots of people who've gone away for some reason and come back to us at some time in the future. And so she asked, could she come and see me before she took off for this big adventure? And she said, so I think I'm doing an exit interview with her, so I've got in the back of my mind, what it is I'll talk to her about. And she said, I don't want to do an exit interview. She said, would you just tell me, how did I go? And so I quickly had to boil that down of what I'd been thinking about. And so I said to her, well, let me give you an example. Let's suppose the Prime Minister of the country telephoned the general manager of the venue that you're working in and said to you, we have a problem, we're being invaded, your venue's about the size of 4 city blocks, you're going to have to defend it yourself, we can't give you any resources from the military or anything else, you're on your own, get on with it. And so the general manager calls his 40 or 50 staff together and said, I've just had a phone call from the Prime Minister and here's what we've got to do. So we're going to break into 2 teams and we are going to defend this place until there's nobody standing. And I'm going to take one team, and I said to this young lady, and he's asked you to lead the other team. And he then says, so jump on a team because we're going into battle. And I said to her, how many of your fellow employees would have jumped on your team? And her eyes welled up, and I thought, oh, geez, didn't mean to do that. And she said, probably none of them. And I said, well, if there's one takeout that I can give you, don't be too hard on other people. It's okay to be right all the time, and it's okay to be tough and those things. But if you don't have respect for other people, because people want to be led. I think that's the case politically, but I definitely think it's the case in business. I think people want to be led. They want to be led by somebody who will take them over the hill, will take the first bullet for them, will not put them in harm's way, will allow them to make decisions, will encourage them in the instance they make mistakes, as long as they don't make it a second time. And people want to be led. And I think they want to understand the boundaries of the organisation they work for, what the moral stance of the organisation is. I find is very important. Young people who come to work for us these days, they interview us more than we interview them. But they want to understand the morals of our organisation and what it is we're going to do for them. So I think that if I could be that leader that takes my people over the hill, then that's what I aspire to.
So having said that, you've been described as the entertainment king, but if I asked members of your team to tell me about Harvey, what do you think they'd say?
Well, I hope they'd say something funny. I like people who have senses of humour, and I don't take myself too seriously. I like to think that we give people opportunities at careers rather than give them jobs.
So what are they going to say about you personally?
I think that
your team members.
Well, I would hope that they would say that we've given them careers and opportunities, and that we've also led them, but not that we get in the way of them getting on and doing their job. You do need to let people. I believe you do need to let people do things, make mistakes, help them correct through that. And I say to young people who ask me about that, I say, if you've got a department manager or a boss or somebody you're working for, and they're not encouraging you to have a crack, and if you make a mistake, that's okay, we're going to work around that, just don't make it a second time. And if they're not encouraging you through that, then go and get yourself a different boss.
But they say about you that you're authentic. They'd say about you that they know where they stand. You make it very clear, right?
I'd hope so.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Good. So let's just go through maybe some of the biggest mistakes you've made that you want to share with us.
How long have we got?
And then just give us say a couple of mistakes that you maybe not regret, but you learned from, you moved on from quickly, and there were outcomes that you finally generated out of it.
I don't regret anything, and I guess there's mistakes. There's projects that we should have won that we didn't get. for an organisation like ours, they're big mistakes. But nobody ever went broke by saying pass. And we've passed on some things that in retrospect we probably shouldn't have. Some of them we've picked them up later on, so that's okay. Never say die. But I've made some mistakes there, but I think we've made those decisions for the right reasons.
Okay. If there was a scale, if there was a spectrum of risk-taking, opportunity-seeking, where would you sit? What kind of risk-taker are you?
Yeah, no, we're reasonable risk takers. You know, we're in the entertainment, sport and event business. We sometimes put our toe in the water to do things that don't work. But we work on averages, of course, so you've got to make sure that you have more wins than you have losses. And though sometimes we've taken a crack at something that we expected would have done better. And it didn't, but that doesn't mean that might mean that we're impacted, but it doesn't mean we made the wrong decision. Yeah, there's a particular event at the moment where we're working with a promoter. You know, it's called a train wreck. You know, it's one that they're having a go, and it's just a bit early in the cycle for that act, and they probably need to wait until after this coming Christmas break. And the merchandising for this act is going to make it huge, and by February, March next year it will be enormous. So they've taken a decision, they've gone early, it's not right, they know it, they're very experienced, so we're joining with them. So we've said, okay, well, we're going to work with you through it. It's in a couple of our convention centres, and we've recut the deal so that event is going to come back inside 12 months' time, and we're going to make our owners good money. And so, yes, we do need to take risks, but we try not to take risk on two sides of a deal. So if we've taken a risk on a venue, we're guaranteeing its operating cost for the year, we are at risk in what we're doing, whatever that level of risk is. We try not also to be in risk on the content side. So we're trying to place that content, even though we might secure it, we're trying to place it with a very good conference organiser or a good promoter who's going to do the right thing by it and grow that product.
So you're now the biggest venue management group in the world, correct?
Well, so people say, but we try not to talk about that.
So let's talk about it now. So take us through just the growth scale of your venue management group and why you would describe yourself as the biggest in the world. And
Well,
by the way, sorry, Harvey, I should say too, your announcement today about the Bangkok-based venues and so on, just build that into your response to that.
Okay. Well, we're like a hotel chain for public assembly facilities. So we have 4-star venues and 5-star and 6-star. Some of those are wonderful convention exhibition centres, some are sports stadiums, some are entertainment arenas, sometimes it's a festival space. And we're in that wonderful position of getting the opportunity to manage these crown jewels that governments and communities have built for people to come and be educated, to be enlightened, to be shocked if it's on a theatre stage, to be entertained, to be stunned if it's a wonderful bicycle kick in a soccer game. It's a wonderful space to be in, and we work long hours because we effectively have two jobs. We work when we're planning for events and getting events, and then we work when the events are on. If I had a choice, I'd be happy just to work when the events are on. That's the great reward. The look on kids' faces, those girls at the front of Katy Perry and Pink, some of them who are seeing a concert event for their first time. But I say to our employees, don't ever forget how lucky you are, because in our convention centres, there's a wonderful story of a international conference, and a professor from the Netherlands stands up at the conference event and he announces that he and his research team have just discovered the God particle. And so we say to our employees, that's a really special moment in history when that happened and you were there for it. Or when we had G20 in Brisbane and our team at the Brisbane Convention Centre all took on, our management team all said, well, what can we do to help? And it's, okay, we need you to look after that lift. And so there's a young fella who's standing there looking after a lift, and when any of the leaders need to go up and down, his job was to drive it. And there's people in the room who will remember his name, and it's gone from me at this minute. So I'm going to call him Scott. And so a whole stack of people come over in dark suits. Well, they were all CIA and FBI and Barack Obama. And he walks over and says to him, "Hi, Scott." He said, "G'day." He said, "I want to go to level 1. And so, Scott does that. And he said, "Scott, can you drive this thing?" And he said, "Absolutely, Mr. President." He said, "Let's go." And they go down one level down to the car park, and then he shakes his hand and thanks him and walks out. Now, those days are, I mean, that's pretty special. But it's the same. Again, we're at a point in time in history where the industry is changing. Nobody has ever had to face digital disruption before. And so all of those experts have been telling us for the last 10 years, this is coming and everybody's going to be out of business, and people will just all sit in their lounge room and they'll be able to watch any act in the world they like. And we've always said, well, no, we don't think that's the case. In fact, we're all human beings, and we interface really well. We like to bounce off other people. And if somebody else is laughing or enjoying something, then that improves our experience as well. So I say to our employees, we have to deliver people an experience they can't get in their lounge room.
But is there an area of digital disruption that you think that you would forecast, you would see in the next few years?
Oh, well, yeah, look...
Do you see that having an impact on your industry?
Well, I think we've probably got a pretty good handle on everything that's happening.
Okay.
There's hologram business out there now that we're using in our venues as part of events, but I don't think we're going to get a 15 or 17 or 50,000 ticket sale full house to watch a hologram. I just don't think that's going to happen. So that's the bit of digital disruption. I think there's a lot of things that is adding value to what those events are, but I don't see that it's going to replace them.
Okay. Now, we've just mentioned the Bangkok arenas that you're now you've announced today. Also, Dubai, where you've got an arena there. What is your global growth strategy from here?
Well, AEG as a global group, the growth strategy is we want to be in the iconic buildings in every major city in the world, and we don't make apologies for that. Our joint venture with AEG sees me being responsible with my team for everything from China to the Middle East and everything south. So I do occasionally joke with our partners in LA that, well, I've got 60% of the world's population. How are you going? But we are starting to see those major public assembly facilities emerge because those cultures haven't had the need for that, and we're now seeing it everywhere. So yes, today we've announced a 17,000 seater and a 5,000 seater, both of them. Concert arenas for Bangkok in Thailand, which gets 27 million visitors a year, I think it is. So it's one of the most visited cities on the planet. We will take in their Western music, but we will take in Cantopop and J-pop and K-pop and Thai product, and we'll do indoor sport, and we'll do Thai kickboxing, and we'll take in basketball and
So
the whole range of things.
So Harvey, is there a central purpose? I mean, what drives you? Is there a central purpose, a burning desire? What drives you?
I get up every morning and I reflect on the fact that I'm probably responsible for 15,000 mortgages and about 20,000 sets of school or university fees. People need me to keep doing things and need my management team to keep doing what we're doing and what we do and go out and multiply for people who work with us to get opportunities, and that's a big responsibility. So I've been fortunate enough not, I could have sat on a beach for a lot of years, and I would hate that, but that would be abandoning all of our people who put their heart and soul into the business we operate.
Now, one question is, what do you think distinguishes successful entrepreneurs? And what's your advice to, say, a young person about to undertake an entrepreneurial journey in the modern entertainment industry? And what are the attributes you think they've got to demonstrate?
Well, not just in the entertainment industry. We do get approached by young people who have great ideas, some great innovations and some great concepts. The thing I always say to them is, well, make sure that the idea that you've got or the concept that you have actually fixes a problem. There's a million different ways to do certain things, and just coming up with a different way of doing it doesn't entitle you to expect that it's going to be picked up and used. And I take in our industry the ever-evolving business of ticketing, both digital, the disruption areas, the blocking of scalpers and bots and all of those things. And people come and say, I've got this fantastic idea. Okay, that looks really good. If we had a 200-person show, that would probably be really good. But somebody's going to have to go and invest $50 to $100 million to put that into a system that's going to do the job at the scale we have to do it at. Because quite often when we're selling tickets, we might be clearing out rugby league or AFL grand finals in a day. But what nobody sees is the 80,000 attempts per second to get online. That just blocks up the whole of the system and crashes things. And next year it might be 800,000 attempts per second. So people.
Now one thing I do want to do is, because we are short of time, I want to make sure we get to you for any questions that you would have. So please start to think of those, and we'll come to you very shortly. But I do want to cover this game-changing vision that you're about to be involved with. And this is the plans for a new $2 billion entertainment precinct in the heart of Brisbane that you're partnering with the government on. Give us an understanding of that and what it means for us.
Well, in 2007 we registered the name Brisbane Live, so we're 2018. So that's about how long it takes to get things through. But I think we've been really fortunate in both sides of politics in this state have identified the need, and we have something that we very rarely see, and that is both sides of Parliament saying, come on, let's make this happen. And so we started in a process called a market-led proposal process, which is, I find them very difficult because of the process you have to go through. And effectively that means if you get a good idea, well, you've got to pay for it 100% as well. And the only way to do that was to take a very large tract of land and say, okay, well, there's 12.5 hectares there over the railway track, so we'll bring in some partners and we'll come up with a 15-year pipeline of work, and if that's what we have to do to be able to build an arena, that's it. Well, the the state government, Anastasia Palaszczuk's government, had a look at that, and I think that they realised that, well, that's not the best outcome for the state either. I agree with that. And so they cancelled that process, and they effectively novated our idea across to the Cross River Rail Delivery Authority, who I must say I've been very impressed with the speed that they're working on this. But that now means the state and Cross River Rail Delivery Authority would be responsible for delivering that, and they've entered into an early operator engagement deed with us, and we have a briefing tomorrow afternoon on where they're up to on the first run at the design, so they get their costings and everything right. We've provided a massive amount of material, functional briefs and things, and that relationship's really good. But I think that you also have to have some luck. And I think our luck is that both sides of Parliament recognised this was needed, and the minister responsible for the Cross River Rail project in Queensland is also the Treasurer, and that's Jackie Trad, and when she sets her sights on something, she makes it happen. And so I think that Jackie has grabbed this and said, yes, I see the need, and I can see how it fits to create a precinct above rail so that it's activated and used and safe. And that's where that's at.
Thanks, Harvey. In promoting, I just want to get to this as well, in promoting big entertainment tours and in managing venues around the world, you've rubbed shoulders with some big entertainment figures like Elton John, Rolling Stones, and Bette Midler. Do you want to share a story with us? Just a story, just one story.
Yes. I tell you, I'm going to grab Bette Midler, if I can. I think that's the safest. So in the early the 70s, the late 70s, and the great Bette Midler, who my wife Margie and I were fortunate enough to see her perform in Hello Dolly in New York, only back at last Christmas. Absolutely stunning she was. Just fabulous. Anyway, so she was playing Festival Hall, sold out, midweek night in Brisbane, and she's on stage in a wheelchair, dressed as a mermaid, singing, rocking backwards and forwards in the wheelchair, in character from a movie that she'd been in, which I just can't remember at the moment. And there was a power blackout in Brisbane. It was the days of Joh Bjelke-Petersen in Queensland, and there were power blackouts that happened for a whole range of reasons. Totally black, nothing. So it's straight away refunds, and you start, everything runs through your mind because we don't know how long we're out for. And so at the old festival hall, they had these ushers who wore black and white and bow ties and all had a torch. And so she called an usher over to her and got him to put his torch on her from standing on the floor. And then she beckoned some others over, and there's about half a dozen of them. And she put her hands up like that. And when I say the entire audience, you've got to remember, Festival Hall was tiny. It was only 3,500 people. We were sold out, 3.5. Put her hands up, everybody totally quiet, and she picked up where she was in that song and sang a cappella till she finished it. And then she went into the next song, and then the next one, because she was staying there as long as it took, because they'd paid their money.
Sure.
And so the lights flickered, and the production guys had wound down the sound system so speakers didn't blow it when the power came back on. And she just put her hands up again and said, "I'll be back," and then went backstage and reset the system. So it was one of the great rescues of all time. And when you look that some of those artists you mentioned, Elton John, the Rolling Stones, and Rod Stewart, and that era of acts, they all grew up performing live.
Exactly.
And they grew up with people screaming things at them from the front row, and they learned how to do entertainment live.
Let's take some questions from the audience. Any questions? Please raise your hand. We've got a microphone here. If anyone would like to raise their hands right here. Thank you.
I thought I was going to get to go home early.
Harvey, you talked about your early career and how you started out as an announcer, and you said you look for people taking the initiative. And you also talked about your current role where you're leading a very large global company. What do you think the difference is in terms of risk, which you talked about, between when you were very young and you looked for the initiative, and as the leader of a global corporation, how do you look at risk, and how does it differ from when you were very young to where you are now in your career?
Thanks.
That's a really good question. So I think there's two answers to that. The risk today is massively different, but a lot of the risk is exactly the same. And so I don't think people should ever be scared of risk. And in fact, I think it's a great motivator for people. When I was young and starting, we were actually inventing the industry, and nobody had done what we did. There weren't lots of venues. Nobody privately operated venues. They were run by town councils and city councils and things. And so when we started doing concert tours of those very early Australian bands, at the time they first started, our first tour was a Brisbane act, Billy Thorpe, but after that there was this new wave that happened, that rock and roll radio broke records and made stars overnight, and bands would come out on the road. So it was Sherbet and Skyhooks and AC/DC and Little River Band and Marsha Hines and those acts. And so we were taking calculated risk. We had a pretty good feel. We knew what the record sales were in each market. We could decide, did we play Toowoomba and Warwick or just Toowoomba? And they were calculated risks, and I started taking those acts out, organising it on behalf of either a promoter or on the band's management, more usually, with $50. And because that's all I had, and so you would not just, you were taking a risk. You didn't want it to go wrong, and we would get into a town or a city in the morning. Townsville we'll take, and we would go and clear the box office. We'd go to the council and pay for the space. It was the Dean Park Sound Shell in Townsville, and we would go and pay the newspaper for the advertising. We'd pay the radio station and do all of those things, and then go to the venue and get the production in there and set up, and then we'd go out and do the media calls with the acts, and then we'd be back. We would make the cordial. Sometimes in the ladies' toilets, we would put the cordial in the yellow bucket, and then we'd stick it under the tap in the basin in the ladies' toilets and mix that around, and then fill all the cups up outside, and then sell tickets and get the house in, and then when the house was in, get up on the box and run the follow spot for the show, and at the end of the show, get the house out. Sometimes help the crew get the production out, and make sure the call was totally spotless before we left. And then, when we sent the band back to the motel where they would stay for the night, and they'd go through to the next city the next day on the bus, we would get on the road and drive. And so we got through to the next city by 7 a.m. in the morning, and got a couple of hours sleep, and did it all again. So you're taking financial risk. It impacts your life.
I think I told you that there was a concert I went to, Elton John, 1971, Randwick Racecourse, the first time he'd been in Australia, released one album at the time. There were 4,000 people at Randwick Racecourse, and there was Elton John's performing on stage, and he's got a canvas backdrop. And as he's performing, a wind blew up and dropped the canvas backdrop on top of him. And all you saw was this green mound playing the piano. And then he said, "I've never camped on stage before."
Right.
Yeah. So it's amazing those times. It just
Yeah, well,
Pretty
Elton,
basic, weren't they?
Elton is a trooper, and with AEG, we're currently booking his current world final tour, so a 3-year, 300 date. And he's out, and he's got so much production on the road that they're having to recast the run at the moment. It's very exciting. But actually, like Elton, we used to do them at the old Milton tennis courts here in Brisbane. And there was a big wooden grandstand, and the crowd would be jumping up and down, and the follow spot was doing this. It was nearly, I don't know how that didn't fall down.
There's another question from the audience. Has it got any easier or harder for unique local and Australian talent to surface, do you think?
Yeah, I think the change in radio has done that. There's so much streaming now. Record sales don't give you the right feel at all. And radio's no longer breaking acts. So you used to be able to put an act into high rotation, and by the second week you pretty much knew whether that act or that single or that album was going to break. That doesn't happen now, and there's so many different genres of music in streaming and in radio and in digital radio as well. People can listen to such a fine stream of things that they're interested in that no longer are we seeing the industry breaking those acts that go through and become those super acts. And so it's a very
different environment.
Yeah, it's an entirely different environment now.
So, parting advice, just for emerging business people in the audience. We have a number of young and entrepreneurs. We have early commercialisation company leaders here and innovators in the audience tonight. Just give us some of those big lessons that you want to leave with us.
Well, for innovators and for startups, you won't want to hear this, but my experience is one of the principal reasons that young businesses fail is because they're not properly capitalised. So it's easy for us to sit here and say, so if you have an innovation, you're going to go out and do it. Well, make sure you're properly capitalised. Well, there wouldn't be a startup who doesn't say exactly. Now, where do I get that from? And so that is a challenge. But back yourself. Don't ever be defeated and step back and say, okay, well, this just isn't going to work. But make sure that it's actually solving a problem that needs to be solved, as opposed to an innovation for the sake of it being an innovation, I would say.
Any question? Thank you. Good.
You mentioned the disruption from digital that it's had on ticketing, and certainly technology will have enhanced a lot of the performances that you've put on over the years. But could you talk a little bit about another disruption that you would have had to contend with, and that's security, and the fact that at every venue you've had to increase security, and that's probably been a big influence on the business overall?
Yeah, so the front page of the Manchester Evening News or the Manchester Morning Paper, whatever it's called, after the bombing was full front page. It said, "The day the music died." Now, a bit like the strawberry response that we're seeing here in this state right at the moment, we general public, we're not going to stand for that, and so we step up and we go out more, and so I think the industry has rebounded really strongly from a 24-hour period where we're all trying to work out what that meant. We also tried to work out what it meant when two big towers in New York came down in the lead up to the Sydney Olympic Games. So we were running the big stadium in Sydney, and that was very concerning for us. So I think that we're seeing the industry's response now. I think government officials around the world, we're seeing barriers and barricades. We're seeing cameras everywhere. Our new arena being built in Dubai, which will open in about April next year. I think we're at 600 facial recognition cameras. This technology has been around for a long time. Some of it was Israeli military technology. Some of it's just been sitting there dormant. There's now opportunities for that to come forward. We can read at 200 metres. We're told the technology will be able to not only tell us who that person is, it'll be able to read your shallow capillaries and your deep ones, tell us how much alcohol's in your system and if you're under the influence of a drug.
I remember recently in China, 50,000 seat stadium, they were able to facially recognise everyone in that audience. Yep. And they got 5 criminals they've been trying to arrest for some time.
Well, of course, this is one of the things that will happen. You see, as venue operators, we can't be given access to the servers with all of the faces of all of the people that the police would like to find. So what happens is that they will have parallel access to all of our cameras. We in the venues, firstly, we're watching for what's happening. You can't watch 600 cameras at once. But you know, if we've loaded somebody's information up in there because of a previous experience or some advice we're given, well, we'll find them. But in the meantime, the police are able to look at everybody. They're going to get every parking fine person, and they'll be running their own business. But you have a look in China now, where they have, I can't remember the number, some of you will know, maybe millions of facial recognition cameras across their entire country. You know, we started in this country in Ipswich, and we thought that was pretty intrusive, putting cameras in the streets. Well, nothing like it is in the great nation of China, and yet the public in China are saying, well, we're not actually confronted by that because we're not doing anything wrong.
No. So, final question from the audience, if there is one. Peter? Did everyone hear that question? Would you mind just taking that again, if you don't mind?
What was the big step from managing or being promotions manager at Myers Brookside to the business that you're now in? And what did you see that led you from there to the journey that started out to this extraordinary journey?
Well, I was the promotions, excuse me, I was the promotions manager. I'd been there 7 months, and the promotions manager at the Chermside shopping centre and the big Myer store there, and Myer managed that shopping centre as well, had been called up for national service. And so I got promoted after 7 months to that. I got an approach from an Australian company, Ray White, who managed 4 shopping centres in Brisbane, and they came and asked me to work for them and manage their 4 shopping centres from a promotion marketing point of view. The Ray White did all the leasing. And from there, I got the approach from 4IP to come and be their promotions person. And whilst I was there, the Australian bands started to go out on the road. We had a new industry that grew up overnight, and so managers of those bands would call and say, we're looking for a support act, can you help us find 8 road crew, we need a Hammond B3 with a Leslie box, you know, a keyboard, and this and that and something else. And so those opportunities came along, and I grabbed each one of them. And that's why I say to young people these days, don't ever not grab that opportunity.
Did you ever set goals?
No.
You just had opportunities presented to you and you just grabbed them?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, good. Listen, final question, if we could. What do you want the headline of your life to be? What do you want the headline of your life to be?
Wow. Well, excuse me, I have a croaky voice. I'm going to steal half a line from a great friend of mine, a Brisbane guy, Dennis Handelin, who runs Sony Music in this half of the world. And we both came through the industry at the same time. And we were having a chat a few months ago. And so I guess what I would say is that in the music business, it is a race, but there's no finish line. And so I think that's what it is for us. This is a frantic race we're in to to be the best at what we do. Deliver people experiences, not just events. Deliver them experiences that they can't get in their own lounge room. But there is no finish line. Someone else will take this up.
Please thank Harvey Lister. Thank you.
All right?
Fantastic. That's great. Great.
Harvey, it's been an amazing journey, and a number of thoughts struck me as I was listening to you. And one is moments in time, and we often talk about moments in time for entrepreneurs, you know, and seizing the moment. And Eva Burrows, who is an extraordinary inductee into the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame, said to us when we were interviewing her in Melbourne for induction, she said, "Don't worry about tomorrow, focus what's in front of you, seize it and do it well." And I just have the impression that when Desmond Hughes presented you with that opportunity, there was no hesitation. What you didn't say, and I think underlying that, is when you go back to Stratty, you were very clear, I'm not going to university, there's something there. And I suspect that modestly you knew there was something inside you, and in this space, in the promotions space, dealing with other people and encouraging other people. The other thought that struck me was when you were talking about Brisbane Live, and you said both sides of politics are supporting this. It's a big idea. It's great for the community, and both sides of politics support it. This is really a very rare thing for entrepreneurs. But it's a great Queensland story, and it mirrors another great Queensland story which has similar characteristics, and that's the story of Maha Sinnathamby and Bob Sharpless, who formed Springfield Land Corporation and who got an 89-0 vote in the state parliament to build Springfield, which is, as you know, growing into a city initiated by two people. So it's an extraordinary feat on your part to build an idea which has such great potential and potential community benefit, and get both sides of politics to support it. And I think the reason we have the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame and the Game Changer series is to celebrate our great entrepreneurs who have bold visions and the capacity to persuade others, the community and leaders and investors to support those ideas. It's called community building, state building, nation building, and I think it's an extraordinary achievement. And in summary, I'm always looking for the subtext, and I would say, Harvey, you found your gift early in life, you've honoured it, and you continue to pursue it. And I think it's an extraordinary story, and I ask you all to thank Harvey once again. And also, Ray, thank you once again for a wonderful interview. And I must say the most wonderful thing about tonight was your recovery from your wardrobe malfunction. So please thank Ray. Thank you all for coming tonight. We appreciate your support. All having busy lives, but to come here and share in the conversation is great, and we hope that you've taken inspiration from it, and we hope good lessons for your own business journeys. We would like to thank Pitcher Partners, Channel 7, NAB, Morgans and RACQ for their support, without which our endeavours in this space would not be possible. So thank you very much to our sponsors. I invite you to come to the next Game Changer conversation on the 27th of November, which will showcase one of Australia's leading company directors, Dr. Kristen Ferguson. She has a remarkable background and is now making serious inroads in the public company director space, including her role as the director of the ABC, so she might have some interesting comment on events at the ABC this week. But in the meantime, we'd invite you to enjoy some refreshments on the terrace, courtesy of Clovelly Estate, Queensland's fine wine producer, and the Newstead Brewing Company. Thank you very much for coming. We hope to see you at the next event. Good night.